You don't lose your future in one dramatic mistake. You lose it quietly. In fragments. In sentences you never thought mattered. In stories you told the wrong person. On the wrong day. For the wrong reason. This video is about those moments. The ones you never realized were turning points. Most people think danger looks loud. Betrayal. Confrontation. Enemies. But the most destructive losses begin with comfort. A conversation. A nod. Someone saying, "You can tell me." That's where it starts. Oversharing doesn't feel reckless, it feels human, honest, relieving. That's why it's dangerous. Because the instinct to reveal is older than logic, older than wisdom, older than survival. Buddha warned that speech is karma in motion. Jung warned that what you reveal unconsciously becomes a weapon in another person's psyche. Machiavelli warned that power leaks through the mouth long before it collapses in reality. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming precise. About knowing that silence is not absence, it is position. I want you to listen to this as if I'm sitting across from you. No performance, no audience, just you and me. Because somewhere in your life you've already paid the price for telling the wrong story to the wrong person. You probably told it thinking it would bring understanding. Instead, it shifted how they saw you, how they treated you, what they allowed themselves to do to you. That wasn't coincidence. That was psychology. The mind is not a safe place to deposit truth indiscriminately. Some minds metabolize information into wisdom. Others turn it into leverage. Zen teaches restraint not as suppression but as clarity. The wise person does not speak less because they fear expression. They speak less because they see consequences earlier. Let's begin with a brutal truth most people never accept. Not everyone hears your story the same way you mean it. They hear it through their wounds, ambitions, insecurities, and hunger. Your vulnerability is not received neutrally. It is interpreted. And interpretation determines fate. The first person you must never overshare with is the one who listens too eagerly. The curious listener. They don't interrupt. They nod. They lean forward. They ask gentle follow-up questions. It feels safe. It feels validating. But curiosity is not compassion. Curiosity is appetite. Jung would say this person is collecting psychic material. Not to understand you, but to understand how you work. Your fears, your guilt, your triggers, your blind spots. They remember details you forgot you shared, not because they care, but because information gives them orientation. It gives them advantage. They are not malicious by default. But when conflict arises, when competition appears, when insecurity surfaces, your story becomes their map. Machiavelli warned that the one who knows your inner terrain does not need to attack you openly. They can wait. They can apply pressure precisely where you collapse. The curious listener often reveals themselves later, in subtle comments, in jokes that cut too accurately, in moments where they accidentally repeat something you trusted them with. By then, the damage is already done. The second person you must never overshare with is the moral judge. This one feels righteous, values-driven, correct. They speak in principles. They say things like, people should, and that's not okay. You mistake their certainty for safety. You think ethics equal discretion. They don't. The moral judge does not hear your story to understand you. They hear it to place you. Once you speak, you are categorized. Your pain becomes evidence. Your mistakes become identity. Your growth is irrelevant because judgment prefers permanence. Buddha warned against attachment to views. The moral judge is addicted to their view of themselves as good. Once you violate that image, even unintentionally, you become a threat to their self-concept. And threats must be corrected, exposed, or quietly distanced. They will never repeat your story with malice. They will repeat it with justification. That's far worse. The third person is the chronic victim. This one shares their suffering easily. They cry, they struggle, they seem fragile. You overshare out of empathy. Reciprocity feels natural. But here's the danger. Victims do not want shared healing. They want mirrored pain. Your story becomes currency. They compare, they measure, they compete silently. If your pain seems lighter, they resent you. If it seems heavier, they feel invalidated. Either way, your story is no longer yours. Jung would say this person projects their shadow onto you. Your strength threatens their identity. Your resilience feels like betrayal. Eventually, your story becomes something they subtly undermine. They reinterpret it to confirm their narrative that life is unfair and people are untrustworthy. The fourth person is the equal who stopped growing. This one is dangerous precisely because they started beside you. Same background, same level, same timing. But at some point you moved. They didn't. When you overshare your doubts, struggles, or fears, they store them. Not consciously, instinctively. Nietzsche warned that resentment grows most fiercely among equals. The one who stayed behind cannot forgive the one who walked forward. Your story becomes reassurance, proof that you're not really ahead, that you're still flawed, still stuck, still uncertain. And when you succeed anyway, those stored confessions resurface, not to help you but to rebalance the psychological hierarchy. The fifth person is the over-empathetic helper. This one is subtle. They care deeply. They support. They check in. They say the right things. But their empathy lacks boundaries. And empathy without boundaries becomes intrusion. They begin to identify with your story. They internalize it. They retell it as if it were partly theirs. Zen warns that compassion without awareness creates attachment, and attachment leads to control. This person does not mean harm. But when your path diverges, when you no longer need them, your story becomes the tether they use to stay relevant in your life. They remind you who you were, what you went through, why you need them. The sixth person is the unstable interpreter. This one hears selectively, emotionally, in fragments. You share nuance. They hear accusation. You share vulnerability. They hear weakness. You share context. They hear excuse. Jung would call this a projection engine. Your story becomes raw material for their inner chaos. They will misunderstand you with confidence. And once misunderstanding becomes belief, it cannot be corrected. Oversharing to this person is like writing on water. The meaning dissolves, but the emotional impact remains. The seventh person is the keeper of nostalgia. Someone who knew you before. A longtime friend, family, someone who remembers the old you. You overshare because history feels safe, because they've seen worse, because they know your heart. But people invested in your past often resist your future. Your story threatens their memory of you, and memory once threatened becomes defensive. They don't sabotage consciously, they anchor you psychologically. They remind others who you used to be. And stories from the past, once repeated, freeze you in time. The eighth person is the silent observer, the quiet one, the one who says little, watches much. Silence is not neutrality, it is collection. Machiavelli respected this type more than any other, because they understand timing. When you overshare with the silent observer, you give them leverage without feedback. You never know how your story landed. You never know how it's stored. And one day, when you least expect it, they use a single sentence that reveals they know far more about you than you ever realized. The ninth person, the most dangerous, is the one with nothing to lose. This person is reckless, burned, detached. They smile too easily at chaos. When you overshare here, you think they understand darkness. But darkness without restraint is predation. Your story becomes entertainment, insurance, ammunition. Nietzsche warned that those who stare too long into the abyss eventually crave company. This person does not betray out of hatred. They betray out of boredom. If you understand nothing else from this video, understand this. Oversharing is not honesty. It is exposure. Buddha taught that right speech is not about truth alone. It is about timing, intention, and recipient. Silence is not secrecy. It is sovereignty. In the next half, we will go deeper. We will dismantle why oversharing feels necessary, what psychological hunger drives it, and how to replace it, not with isolation, but with discernment. Because once you stop bleeding stories into the wrong hands, something strange happens, your energy returns, your presence sharpens, and people treat you differently without knowing why. That is where real power begins. Now we need to talk about the deeper question. Why does oversharing feel necessary in the first place? Because it rarely comes from strength. It comes from tension. Oversharing is pressure release, a psychological exhale. You speak not because the other person is safe, but because the weight inside you has become unbearable. Zen would say the cup is full, and instead of emptying it with awareness, you spill it on whoever is nearby. The mind looks for relief before it looks for wisdom. This is where most people misunderstand Buddha's teaching on truth. Truth is not something you owe the world. Truth is something you steward. When you overshare, you are not practicing honesty. You are outsourcing regulation. You are asking someone else to stabilize emotions you haven't learned to hold. Jung warned that unintegrated emotion seeks witnesses, not healing. Witnesses. And the wrong witness doesn't heal you. They shape you. Every time you tell your story prematurely, your psyche learns a dangerous pattern. It learns that relief comes from exposure instead of mastery. That pattern hardens over time. Eventually, silence starts to feel uncomfortable. Stillness feels like suffocation. And you confuse expression with survival. This is why disciplined people appear calm. Not because they have less emotion, but because they have learned to contain without suppression. Containment is power. The Buddha did not teach silence because speech is sinful. He taught silence because speech multiplies karma. Every word you release creates ripples. Some return years later. Now let's dismantle a comforting lie. People don't misuse your story because they are evil. They misuse it because human beings are opportunistic under pressure. Most betrayals are not planned. They are situational. A conflict, a competition, a moment of weakness. And suddenly, something you shared years ago becomes relevant. That's when your story changes hands. This is why Machiavelli said power is lost before it is taken. It leaks. And the leak is almost always the mouth. So how do you live without oversharing, without becoming cold, isolated, or fake? The answer is not secrecy. The answer is tiered truth. You don't tell everything to everyone. You tell the right depth to the right level of trust. Zen masters spoke of appropriate speech. Words aligned with context. Not silence everywhere. Precision everywhere. Most people only know two modes: silence or confession. Both are extreme. Wisdom lives in the middle. You must learn to speak without revealing, to express without exposing, to connect without surrendering your inner map. Here is the first discipline: delay. If something feels emotionally urgent to say, it is almost always premature. Strong emotion demands expression immediately. Wisdom waits. Delay gives you clarity. Clarity gives you choice. The second discipline is compression. Instead of stories, speak in conclusions. Instead of details, speak in direction. You don't need to explain your trauma to explain your boundaries. You don't need to justify your choices with history. Powerful people rarely explain their past. They state their standards. The third discipline is self-containment. Ask yourself before speaking: am I sharing to understand myself or to be understood? Those are not the same. One builds integration, the other builds dependence. Jung believed maturity was the ability to hold tension without discharge. Most people never reach this stage, they leak instead. Now understand something crucial. Oversharing doesn't just weaken you socially, it weakens you internally. Every time you retell your story, you reinforce that identity. You rehearse pain, you rehearse limitation, you rehearse an old version of yourself. The story becomes a loop. Buddha warned that clinging to narrative is clinging to suffering. At some point, the story stops being something that happened to you. It becomes who you are. And identities built on exposure struggle to evolve. This is why some people stay stuck for years. Not because they don't know better, but because they keep narrating themselves into the same corner. Silence breaks the loop. Not silence as repression, but silence as space. In that space, something shifts. You stop needing witnesses. You stop seeking validation. You stop bleeding for connection. Your presence changes. People feel it immediately. They don't know why, but conversations with you feel different. You speak less, but your words land harder. You listen more, but you reveal less. This unsettles insecure people. They will try to provoke the old you back. They'll say, "You've changed." They'll ask, "Why are you so quiet?" They'll poke at your boundaries. This is the test. If you cave, they regain access. If you hold, a new dynamic forms. Respect often follows silence, not because silence is intimidating, but because it signals self-mastery. The Buddha called this dignity without aggression. Nietzsche would call it strength without resentment. Machiavelli would call it control without exposure. And Jung would say the shadow is finally integrated, not projected outward through confession. Here's the final truth most people never hear. Your story is not meant to be shared widely. It is meant to be transformed privately. Scars teach more than wounds. Results speak louder than explanations. When you stop oversharing, you don't become lonely. You become selective. You begin to recognize who earns access, not through sympathy but through consistency. And those relationships are fewer, but real. If you've been oversharing, don't punish yourself. Awareness is the turning point. Just start here. Say less, wait longer, notice more. Your future depends less on what you do next, and more on what you stop saying today. Because the mind that learns to hold its own weight becomes untouchable, and the person who can remain silent without tension is already free.